What's going on, guys? We're gonna talk about, I guess, each player, or just go through the game. What do you want? What do you want to talk about, JD? You can kick us off.
Every time we touch, we get the feeling.
Yeah, that is how we started.
That is how we start this countdown of craziness. This is
Yeah,
amazing. We are Cameron crazies, and it's countdown to craziness. I can't believe I just watched a scrimmage of a team against themselves, and I'm excited.
yeah, that's true. And they couldn't score against themselves for the first few minutes either. It was a real challenge.
They were
And
it's serious. I mean, they were sweating. They're playing defense. This was not, like, hey, let's go out there and just run up and down the court and let each other dunk. They were playing defense. I think we got a glimpse of each player. So, Jack, take it away.
yeah, I mean, I think the appropriate place to start would probably be Cooper Flag, right? Because he's the guy I think coming into the game that everyone wanted to see. And I think he had, you know, a solid game, but maybe not a spectacular game. What do you think, JD?
Well, I think it's hard to say. Yes, we get little glimpses as to what they could be, and there's been so much hype with Cooper that it's like he's 17 years old, and so for me the biggest takeaway is this guy is 17 years old and that body is only going to grow. And it, I mean, yes, probably I thought the most interesting thing he did was his step back three over
At
Spencer.
the end?
Yeah, now it's over Spencer Hubbard. It's like there's no one in
Well, I
front.
thought he hit one over, who is it? Neil Begovic at the end of the game as well.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe he had two. I didn't remember that one, but so. But I agree. Like that seemed to be a move he liked. And I thought he was aggressive. Like he was going at Malwatch. There's a Isaiah Evans went at him. Like there was a few guys who went at him, which was cool to see. Nobody was. I mean, obviously you go up against them a lot in practice, so I guess opposed to somebody on another team. But I felt like to to your point about Cooper, like he's 17. I thought he got better as the game went on, and I think that's going to be a theme probably amongst the team, but especially with him. And I think the other guy, Kama Malawach, which I think um, unless you had anything you want to add on Cooper
Yeah,
before.
just stay with Flag for a minute. So coming out of the Olympics when he was on the what was it, the team they practiced against, the hype is
Yeah, the select team.
and I think tonight he was hiding his bag of tricks. I think he was basically handing off. I don't think that is he was being part of the team tonight. He was there to be part of the countdown of craziness, but we didn't see that is a guy who's holding back what he really is all about.
Well, it kind of reminds me of what they said about him at the select team, which was on day one, he kind of like fit in. He really wasn't anything special. He just kind of blended in. But then they said on day two, that's when all the highlights of him, scoring on like Drew Holiday, the move on Anthony Davis, like all of that happened on day two when he really kind of felt a little more comfortable. And I think that's something we'll probably see like in the exhibition game, um, or even like the first game against Maine, where he'll start to feel a lot more comfortable, and that's the value of these types of scrimmages. Even though they don't mean anything really, they do help the guys just start to feel a little bit more comfortable, and so when the first game comes, it doesn't actually feel like your first game; it's your third or fourth game.
Well, right, and so that the initial I mean, we both watched the introductions. They all came walking in or dancing into their songs, but I think that somehow for a lot of them, it was a moment in addition to being a basketball player. For a lot of them, they're Cooper Flag, 17 years old. He's in Duke. The fans are going crazy. The light show is nuts. I think for a bunch of them, the moment, they also tried to enjoy it. And knowing John Shire, having met him, he told them, enjoy it. And for Cooper Flag, this will probably be the last time he has like kind of craziness.
Yeah, no, well, I would almost say 100%, but I guess you never know. Anything's possible. But yeah, that's true. It was interesting just going back to that for a moment. Like some of the guys just went out and they gave high fives, right? But then there was like a handful of guys who had like some sort of dance or performance
Who
ready.
was
And
who, wait, I wrote it down, but um it was Stanley Borden, I think, that played the keyboard.
yeah, yep. He did something. Maybe he did the same thing last year. He had some sort of performance the year before as well. Um, he's apparently a very talented guy.
Well, John Shire made a comment when he came out, when they introduced John Shire, and he said, "What tonight is about for us Cameron crazies is for the team to meet and become part of one with the fans." And that is something that Duke tries to build. The Cameron crazies during the year, we know they have been the sixth man, and you and I have been critical when we have felt they have not been in the game and that it hurt.
Yeah, at times in past couple of years, I agree, and at times I felt like um, last year overall, I think you kept remarking that they were better. I think that was a consistent theme of last season, maybe the year before as well. Um, but yeah, I think that's fair, and he made it a point. He did make it a point. You're right, to address them and make it about them. So that was good to see early on. And who was it? Pat Gangba. He went right into the crazies, and he was with them. I think he was the only player who went who went quite that far out.
As opposed to, we also watched the women. The women just jumped all over the place. Women, just for a second here, Jack, women's basketball has taken a quantum leap between Caitlin and Reese. And I think now that is the spillover to the college women's game is now all being elevated by what just happened in the pros. But that's for another show. I think tonight was an introduction to the players. So after Cooper, I thought KK, the Wrath of Khan, the Wrath of Khan, he is going to be a special player.
Yeah, he looked really good. He plays at his own pace. That's what I like about him the most.
Can you pronounce
And
it for me? Because I can't do it.
Canoopel,
Canoopel. All
Con
right.
Canoopel.
Hence KK, the Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, and he's a really good shooter. He's got good vision. Like offensively, he's got pretty much everything that you could ask for from a player, and he looked really good in that first game, or in the first half, I guess, of the scrimmage. But it was interesting in the second half of the scrimmage. I didn't notice him quite as much when they switched up the teams,
Agreed.
and the one thing, like, this is not directly related with Concanoopel, but I was looking to try to see if I could rewind, and I couldn't. But Caleb Foster in the first game versus the second game was like two different people. He made every shot, it seemed like, in the second game, but the first game he struggled, and I couldn't remember. I know Proctor guarded him at times, but I'm sure Sion James was guarding him at times, and I guess on a little bit of tangent here, but the X factor being Sion James and Kama Malawach, the two guys who are on both winning teams, and so I wonder if Sion James was guarding Concanoopel a little bit in that second game, but he looked to bring us all the way back to Concanupal. He looked really good
I I
overall. And I
I
was I was impressed.
You'd mentioned that you'd been watching some of his high school games and that you thought that he actually had a really, really good all around game. And I think at 6'7", his court vision, he's going to be somebody to watch for how, everyone is focused on Coop. And the issue is that we know a championship team, yes, can be led by one player, but there has to be a team around them. And that's going to take me right to Caleb Foster. So I think Caleb was scored plenty of points, but I think there were two aspects of his game that are going to be suspect for me. One, in the clutch, will he hit free throws? And the second one is he the floor general?
Mm.
And I keep looking over the roster to say if he's not the floor general, who is?
Well, I thought he made. I actually thought that was something he did really well. Even in the first game when his shot wasn't falling, he had a few nice passes. I thought he hit Con Canoopel for a three in the corner. I think he may have had a pass to Malik Brown for a bucket. I thought he had a couple assists in the first one, but in the second one, he certainly had around. I think he had three assists in the second half, whatever you want to call these. He found Kama Malawach open. That's how he got his first dunk. I thought he had a few really nice passes. And I thought that's what actually got him going with his own game in the second game, where in the first one, he looked for his shot first and then was passing later on. In the second game, it was kind of the opposite. So I actually thought he did a pretty good job with the floor general aspect. Um, but I do agree with you that, last season, I mean, last year he had the problem with the free throws, and it didn't really make sense. Like it seemed like at some point he would start to hit them, and it just didn't really happen. And so hopefully this is just a scrimmage, and he's just this is it just happened. But I think he was 2 for 4 from the free throw line in his opportunities. I know it's a scrimmage, and we're nitpicking here a lot, but it's just something. I guess it just brings back
We're, we're,
memories from last
we're
year.
crazies. I mean, we just got to watch a scrimmage, and of course, we're going to, get in there and try to figure out what does it all mean. And that's why um, the fans of this show, we're going to take you on a ride because before we ever get to the first game that counts, which is the ASU game, maybe is competition enough, but there'll be some other scrimmages and there's some easy games as they start to form their five. It's not going to be easy for Shire at all, based on bringing in the fifth year players, the recruitment class, the returning veterans. He's got a job ahead of him to figure out how this all meshes.
Well, yeah, and if you're talking about um, Arizona or Arizona State when you say ASU, by the way,
I think do they
because they play Arizona State as an exhibition. I wasn't
right,
sure if that's what.
that's what I'm talking about is the
Okay.
ASU fishing game, which is like the first, real team. And I know it's an exhibition, so maybe the first half they'll play hard and something. But so let's
Well,
see who
they did have. Remember, they did that. They've been doing these, but behind closed doors, right? Some of these scrimmages. Like there was. I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, but they scrimmaged Houston, and Houston, beat them, but it was apparently a close game. I think it was 2 years ago. So this has been going on, but now they're going to televise it, I guess, because at this point everyone knows they happen. So who cares, right? Like it can only help. And they're gonna, I think they're gonna donate some of the money to charity, so it's a great thing. But you may as well. And then to your point, though, they've got, but they have the game against Lincoln, which I think is going to be a nice opportunity for them to go against somebody else, right? Because today I think part of the reason they had so much trouble early on is because you know what the other guy's going to do. You've been practicing against them the whole summer. So at least, you go up against somebody new, they're not going to know necessarily what your first move is. They may know your first move, but they're not going to know your second and your third.
Absolutely. So round out from what you saw tonight. Do you think you have an idea? Any? I know you've been talking about it earlier, but in some of the earlier podcasts. But do you have a sense of the starting five?
Well, I'll answer that question, but I first before we get there, let's I want to mention one other player, and then we can talk about the starting five,
Sure.
which is Kama Malawach, because I thought it was very interesting. When we spoke at halftime, and you mentioned to me how I said to you, he's gonna end up being like Mark Williams or Derek Lively, but it's gonna take time. And we were talking about how it's gonna be interesting to see how he develops, right? Like game by game. And he literally developed game by game today. Where the first game, he was solid, and the second game, he had the dunk. He blocked like 3 or 4 shots. He blocked shots that didn't count. He banked in the three. He he was everywhere. And so I just thought I thought it was pretty funny that that's what we were talking about in terms of following his development, and it literally happened pretty rapidly.
Right before our eyes. I
Yeah.
thought the best story from the commentators was that coming from Sudan, his mentor, so to speak, was Luel Dang, who went on to have a very good NBA career. Um, but that he was trying to figure out which school to go to. And they tell the story that he got it down to two, and it was either going to be Kansas or Duke. So he flipped a coin and it came out Kansas. And he said he was so disappointed by the fact that the coin said Kansas that that's what got him to make up his mind that he's going to Duke.
Yeah. I mean, so relatable, right? Like that's
Yeah,
what I love about him. He every time you listen to him speak, like I loved him on the podcast with Caleb Foster. Like he's just such a relatable person, like a humble guy, like and you can just see he's just probably a joy to be around. And so and I think that's probably I'm glad you brought up that story, because it's probably my favorite part about the other two guys, like Derek Lively and Mark Williams, is that they seem to me to be in different ways very similar, right? Like just great people, good to be around, and guys you root for. And so I think I think it's kind of ironic that Duke for a while, like I didn't have like 7 footers like in the NBA, and then I feel like Marvin Bagley and Wendell Carter, and then maybe I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, Okafor, I guess, before that. But it just didn't seem like they had that type of player, and then now it's like they have somebody like that every other year, every year.
well, I think using Mark Williams and Derek Lively as good recent examples, it is just incredible what it does for the defense when you know if you make a mistake, there's this guy behind you that is absolutely going to try to erase, destroy whoever tries to come down. Oops, I made a mistake on defense. No problem. I mean, when Derek Lively, who when we watched him in the beginning, didn't seem like how could this guy be this good and in terms of his press. And then by the end of the year, we saw a guy that could dominate a game on defense. It was just incredible. And so Malwatch clearly has the opportunity to be one of those.
Yeah, yeah. He was so much fun to watch, especially in the second scrimmage, I guess. Um, and so, with that being said, I think that's a great way to segue back to your question, which is the starting lineup. And I wonder if John Shire kind of tipped his hand um, when you looked at least for me personally, when I looked at the two teams that he put out there, it seemed like the team with Milewatch, Flag, who is it? Sion James, Isaiah Evans, and Proctor seemed like a starting lineup.
It
That
has
was
it
that was
has
my
that
interpretation.
it has that feel to it, but I think that I'm just not there's an abundance of talent, and the only position, and we may have to disagree on this, is do I have that floor general feeling about Caleb Foster? If he does develop into that floor general, there's no reason this team can't go all the way
Well, in that starting lineup, he's not in it.
at all. Oh,
But
you don't
well,
have it, so
I'm
who?
saying
Well,
based
okay,
off of.
good
Go
point.
ahead.
All right, sorry. Okay, so who's bringing the ball up?
By Proctor.
But Proctor is at his best, I think, when he's the two guard.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's a really good passer. Um, but I understand. Why do you think that? Why do you think he's best as the two guard?
Because um, based on his best games last year, he just loves to have the ball when he can shoot and then decide whether he's driving to the basket, and not when he has the initial pressure of deciding how to set the play, set the team, and what to do. He's much better reacting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he kind of went through like ups and downs as like as like a point guard, but I do think he does like to pass. He has good vision. It's just there was like game to game, but I think also last year with Roach and
McCann,
McCain, it's hard to be like, everyone's gotta get the ball, right? They're all guards. Where
yep.
this year, um, you know, in that particular lineup, for example, Sion James and Isaiah Evans can handle the ball along with Cooper Flag, but they're not guards. So you're gonna look to Proctor to bring the ball up, and I think that can give him confidence.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because let's face it, if either one gets in foul trouble, there's got to be somebody else. So I accept your analysis there to say, why not ensure that both of them are capable of doing it.
Yeah, and I would say Con Knuppel and Caleb Foster are certainly pushing to get into the starting lineup.
Could you see KK as the point guard at
Um,
7? That old Magic Johnson kind of way of
but Luca, that's.
I've almost got that sense that he could take over, because his ability, what we saw tonight, was his ability to see the court, and he made long passes, and he's 6'7". Could you
He's
imagine?
strong.
Point.
Yeah, yeah, he might be. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I could see. Well, I don't know if he'll technically be the point guard because I don't think defensively, like for example, you want him out there guarding. Like if we have to go against Marcus Burton, for example, from Notre Dame, who's a really small, speedy point guard. I mean, there's other guys, I guess, who could cover him, right? Like I guess Cooper Flag could guard him, or somebody else, and you could put Khan on somebody else. Um, but I think if he's like, for example, technically the shooting guard on offense, but he can run the offense on when he's a shooting guard on defense, but he can run the offense on offense.
Well, that takes me back to Coop. Is he? A lot of people have said that. And it could just be that he's a 6'9" white guy, and so they go to Larry Bird. But Larry Bird invented the point forward. And, they got the ball to Larry, but Larry really was then controlling the offense for Boston. And Coop could do that. And I'm sorry for the 20 minutes of scrimmage that I have watched, which admittedly is not enough to figure out this team. I wonder how good KK is, and could he run the team and then give Flag the ability to just run wherever he is or wants to go with, you know, um, Ma Malawach down low and then filling in some of the bulky guys they have as transfers. There's just I'm sorry, there's just so many options here.
I agree. I agree. And I think maybe like a good thing as we get towards the end here to talk about maybe would be like who is somebody that we haven't talked about yet that may have like surprised you.
For me, it's Mason Gillis. I really enjoyed watching him, and I think at halftime you pointed out Malik Brown again. You know, these guys are like tanks,
Oh, Sion
and
James. I think that's
Sion
your
James.
time.
They're all they're strong, big guys that can't. I mean, they're admittedly in their fifth year, but you know, it,
I think it's a point of emphasis, right? The past couple of years, that's been a knock against the program. We lose the Tennessee game in what is it 2022 in the second round because they're an older, more physical team. Last year, that was the knock against us. I mean, nobody did in fairness, but we had nobody to guard DJ Burns, and that's why we couldn't, do anything with them. But in fairness, the only guy who could was 7'4", so it's that's not really a knock. But I'm using a poor example to make a point of the fact that overall there's a knock against the program of a lack of physicality overall. And to your point, while it may not be necessarily from the freshmen, Coach Shire made a point to go get physicality from the three transfers he brought in.
I think that's a great point. I mean, they're stronger than they've been, but that it'll be interesting to watch the first couple of games to see what he does. I think the tendency will be certainly to use Proctor or Foster at the guard, but he can go big and strong, and
Who'd you say?
and they could go. He could go big and strong, meaning that he can have KK. I just watched him
Oh,
tonight.
okay. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I want to direct you, I guess, because I'm curious. You really enjoyed his game, so and I answered the question as far as like the starting lineup as what I think, like trying to read through the tea leaves, what I think Coach Shire's thinking, and I could just be completely misreading it. Like he could have made the scrimmage teams. He could have mixed and matched the guys who he thought were going to be his starters. Like maybe he thinks both. Maybe he thinks Concanuple's going to start instead of Isaiah Evans, um, or vice versa. But I could see why Isaiah Evans would start because he's a better defender and he's long and rangy and athletic, right? And if that he's going for defense. But my question for you is, if you were going to pick the starting lineup, what would it be?
Um, because they're a freshman and because they're sophomore and junior, it naturally occurs to me that he'll try to see if Foster and Proctor can work together in the backcourt. Move the Wrath of Khan to forward, and then Flag and Malowich. And that I think will be his natural tendency to have some experience in the backcourt and paired up with just tremendous talent. And then when he has to, he's going to flip in the transfers for more muscle. That's based on 20 minutes of exhibition basketball.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really high on Caleb Foster. And I thought he looked really good in that second game, especially. Like he had that in the first game. He had the spin move. He got fouled. He didn't score, but I thought that's what kind of got him out of a little bit of a rut early. And yeah,
It's his to lose. I just say all I'm saying is definitely we've had concerns with his free throws in clutch situations, and I just don't know with the first team that throws two really aggressive guards at the backcourt, what does he do? Is he panicking, or is he really got it under control and can make that first pass, which leads to then, a 4-on-3 or something? That's the way I see it after 20 minutes of scrimmaging against themselves. So there you
yeah,
have it.
yeah. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Because I think, well, I mean, I'm just looking at the schedule. So October 19th. So basically a little 2 weeks from now. That's when they'll play Lincoln. And I don't, as
Lincoln,
of right now, I don't even know
Lincoln's
what the.
a powerhouse, right? They're the top 25 team.
Yeah, right. By the time we'll do a preview video at some point for Lincoln.
Who are
Um, yeah, well, I'll do some research. I'll figure out who they are, and we'll talk about that. And like, we'll do it in like a week or so. So
you know
we'll
what?
do it a
Here
week before the
I laugh.
game.
And Jack, every time that we've watched them play the team that we sat there, we went, "Who are they?" The first half they struggled.
Well, the past couple years, yeah. And it's funny, it's funny you say that because I know you don't watch all the podcasts, and I guess that's a good place to as we wrap things up. They
I'll do
did
my
they
I'll do
no
my
no no
homework.
no they be,
Yeah, sorry, I'll
yeah
do my homework. I promise.
because Proctor and Foster were on recently, and they were talking about. Proctor mentioned how, this year is going to be different because he said there's too many times the past couple of years where they started the games and they're down 10-0, and I know you and I have seen that so many times over the past few years where the first segment of the game, it's like they're sleepwalking and nothing's going right, and all of a sudden, as he said, they're down 10-0 or it's 12-2, and they're digging themselves out of a hole. And he said this year the emphasis is that they're going to be the team delivering the first punch. So we'll see if they can live up to that billing. So
Great place to leave it, Jack.
yeah, and so with that, we'll see you guys a week from now where we'll be previewing the exhibition against Lincoln. They're from Pennsylvania, so we'll learn more about them. I'll learn more about them, and we'll talk about it.
All right. Signing off.